How does the lack of data affect the Fed's decision-making process? With the Bureau of Labor Statistics being closed for the government shutdown, basically a lot of the data points that the Fed uses, or at least the government data, such as the jobs report, CPI, PCE, those reports are basically stopped when there's no when the government is shut down.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. First of all, we'll bring up the questionable possibility that the government reports are not exactly right, even without any intent.
Mhm.
We've seen some really wrong, job reports across all parties. So there, some of that stuff is more important than others, but you've got a lot of private data. You got a lot of places they can look. They have 400 economists on staff. They have pretty much unlimited budget to try to find data and try to get data themselves. I actually don't know, how I haven't seen any articles or followed up on this yet, but how much of the Federal Reserve has been shut down, if any, during
The
this
Federal
time period?
Reserve is
They're
independent.
all
They're
separate.
independent to the budget, so they're
Oh, they're
independently
that. Okay.
funded. So
Yeah.
they're not affected by any kind of government shutdowns with because of budget appropriations.
Yeah, I bet for the power that they have and the staffing that they have and the experience that they have, they can overcome the shortage of this, government data. And maybe it'll be a good thing because, again, I think the more you can develop resources outside of the government data in case it starts to become manipulated, the better you can be as an investor to try to see how does that match with everything else that, is private.
Yeah, there's been a pretty big proliferation of alternative data sources for a lot of different things. If you look on the internet now,
Right.
there's private proxies for inflation, jobs reports,
Yeah.
anything you can think of. There's some sort of proxy now.
There is a group, I think it's called a Billion Things or something. I forgot, and I just ran into it recently. But what they're doing is they're tracking the prices on uh, uh, like hundreds of thousands of things.
Hmm.
And so they can kind of see individually on those particular goods across that spectrum, what type of inflation we're getting. And because actually the CPI report was manipulated way back when to come in lower because politically it looks better. And obviously, if you're a government entity, you might have to start paying higher based on what's happening with CPI. So if CPI is really 6% and you're reporting 4%, right? So that there's a couple of groups out there that have taken CPI and taken it back to the old level, and it's about right. It's quite a bit higher under the other level, and so sometimes that's what you see, right? You feel this disconnect. You go to the grocery store and they're saying, "Oh, things are only going up 2-3%." That's not what I'm seeing. When I
Hmm.
go to the grocery store, that same bag it just starts costing more and more, for pretty much the same thing. So uh, that's where finding some other sources is a good idea anyway.
Do you think with the lack of sources that the Fed basically are going to just continue down the path because they can't really get those confirmations not to continue down the path?
I think that's the most likely outcome is that, they've already decided through their dot plot, as a majority anyway, a very slim majority, but a majority nonetheless, to do two rate cuts this year. You know, the one private report we just got showed a $32,000 job loss on the ADP report, and then, as you mentioned, they revised the month before
Uh,
August down also to
yeah, it was
negative.
from 54,000 positive to 3,000 negative.
Yeah, so they'll be able to see that. They've Chairman Powell said several times that they are thinking that this bump in inflation will be a one-time event because tariffs will be kind of a one-time event. I sounds a little like wishful thinking to me a little bit. I hope he's right. And so they've decided to use that methodology and thought process to justify lowering rates in a
It,
time frame when
there's
inflation is
also
going
their
up.
thought process for not raising rates
Right.
though
Yeah.
for during the basically when there's a lot of
Yeah.
COVID basically bills.
Well, yeah, because the inflation was transitionary, we don't need to respond to it. And so what they're doing here is not only are they not responding to inflation, they're actually lowering rates, which is even more aggressive. But they are doing so in the face of a job market that is getting soft and it could spiral
Mm.
downward. So I still think they're right in the direction. I think the problem is just the speed. If you do it as fast as Trump and the new guy that he put on the board want to do, I would be really nervous about that.
Yeah,
personally. I think they need to look at it because they are. I mean, you don't want to have a situation where that catapults the stock market into the stratosphere, which then does create really high inflation
yeah, it
that
can
just
cause, and then creates a bubble situation.
yes, it could really run, which is what happened in the 70s. And so we're kind of replicating, this is in the 70s and or late 60s, they were responding to a softer labor market after inflation had come down quite a bit. They lowered rates and, we ended up with a massive problem, huge rates. They had to bring the Fed funds rates up to 19%.
Yeah, it's kind of like a death spiral.
It was, but there was a component of it that's really, really different and super important in the fact that oil went up and from $4 to $40 a barrel 10
Hmm.
times in
Yeah.
7 years. So if that happened now, you would have massive inflation. There's just no doubt about it in my mind. Even though we're less reliant upon oil than we used to be, it still would be a huge differential. So we don't have that. And so maybe, we don't get that big bump. But I would be a little nervous if they were really, really lowering rates.
Hmm.
Right? So anyway,